Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, and once again, I'm joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we aren't doing these weekend updates in any official capacity. We're just giving our opinions on the latest in the Hedera ecosystem and the HBAR economy. Zep, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about here. Why don't we start out with Atmaio Watch? We have Atmaio. It's going to be one of the big use cases on Hedera. And to kick it off, before we discuss it, let's just show a quick clip.
When do you expect to see the transactions from Atma.io recorded and starting to be written on the Hedera network?
It's a great question, Zenobia. We're in the process of completing the platform upgrade as we speak. So our goal is to complete the platform upgrade in a matter of weeks, if not days. And then once we begin that, once that's completed, we'll then be in a position to start writing transactions directly to the network and start to see the proliferation of data on the Hedera ledger to then enable all of these future use cases that leverage DLT to enable decarbonization. So very soon, and earlier, as you're introducing me, you actually said some transactions, and I wanted to clarify that how big the sum means. And we're talking about Atmaio has over 22 billion items currently connected to the platform, and some of these items might trigger 10 or even 20 events related to that item. When it was made, it was shipped, it was received, it was sold, it was scanned, it was recycled. It was, all those different sort of data points along a product's journey become individual events or transactions on the platform. So we're looking forward to driving some transactions on the platform, but it'll actually probably be in the billions upon billions as things start to ramp up.
All right, so pretty exciting stuff coming out of that one. What do you think, Zep?
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like the transaction counts can be sort of staggering. He mentioned I think there's 22 billion items currently on Atmaio. Going by their website, I think 300 unique items get added a second. And then he goes on to say that it could be sort of 20 transactions per item at the very max capacity, which is just like, that's almost unbelievable. To do the maths on those two figures comes out with something that is far beyond any single use case we've ever seen on a public DLT. We don't know what goes on private ledgers necessarily, but with this is this is bigger than anything Ethereum's ever done. It's bigger than anything that Solana's ever done. It's bigger than anything that Avalanche has ever done, or any of the leading DLTs. So for this to come out and not only be doing high throughput, but also be sort of doing something for, social global world good, in terms of, helping track carbon emissions of these unique items in their supply chain, and then helping, I think it was seven out of 20 of the leading global apparel brands are also on board. So, for an industry like apparel that is so massively polluted, if they can accurately track their carbon emissions and then be able to offset them, they are going to have to do that. So if we can provide the best infrastructure for that, then it's just, unprecedented.
Yeah, some of the largest fast food chains as well. And one thing that I want to point out here is we often talk about, transactions, and we think about HTS transactions, which are only 1/100th of a cent, or crypto transactions. But I'm not exactly sure how Atmaio is going to set this up. But, there could be token creations, which are $1 a pop, account creations, which are 5 cents, and on down the line. All transactions on the Hedera network are not the same. And the reason why we get excited about these transactions is because these fees can be used to build out the network, incentivize nodes, incentivize token holders, and on down the line. Those are the things that we get excited about. We want this ecosystem to grow, and that's where a lot of the capital could come from. So the other thing is, I wanted to get into this because I'm building something in stealth. Me and Jesse Damro, the guy that I used to do Hedera Forum with, are building something. It's called Twigital. It is going to have mints of one-of-one NFTs. It's not what you think. Again, we're still in stealth. We don't want to talk about it completely. But I was running through, our revenue projections and our Hedera KPI projections, things like that. And, we were looking at, well, every single one of these NFT one-for-ones is $1 of revenue for Hedera. So there's huge benefits to some of these other kind of transactions. So Atmaio, again, I don't know how they're going to use the transactions, use the network, use the different services, but it could generate a significant amount of revenue.
Definitely. I'm very excited to see that.
All right. So now taking a look at our transaction volume, we are sitting at about 1 million transactions per day right now. I don't think that's actually from Atmaio. They might be coming online in a very small way, but I think when they really come online, we're going to see a really big uptick. I think the increase that we've seen over the past several days is actually coming from ad stacks coming back on, possibly with a new client or something along those lines.
So yeah, I mean, one thing so there's this. Have you seen Metrica, the dashboard?
I haven't actually.
So there's a dashboard called Metrica that's been floating around, and on that you can see it gives us a really good account of the max TPS seen on the day. And so today I'm looking at it right now. The max TPS that's been caught is 116, but either yesterday or the day before, the highest that I'd seen was 906. And currently a week ago it reads 488. So something's definitely ramping up in sort of intervals. Who it is and what they're doing, we don't know that quite yet. But is it Atmaio? Is it AdStacks? Maybe they're both going to come on at the same time, and that's going to sort of send us to Valhalla.
Well, time will tell, right? So the next thing I wanted to touch on is the Coinbase probe. So the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, is probing into Coinbase, saying that they may have listed some securities. And of course, we've talked about how we want regulatory clarity, and it kind of reminds me of the Laffer curve, right? When it comes to regulation and crypto. And if anybody's not familiar, the Laffer curve has to do with tax revenue and tax rate. As the tax rate starts to increase, you, of course, increase tax revenue. And there's a point at which you're going to have maximum growth. You need tax revenue to have things that are important for the economy, like rule of law. So you're going to need a judiciary, you're going to need law enforcement, you're going to need common defense, so you're going to need a military, things along those lines. But as you continue to increase past the maximum growth point, eventually you're going to reach a maximum revenue point, and then it's going to start to drop off because people try to avoid taxes that undermine the rule of law when it comes to taxes. People are going to be less entrepreneurial. There's going to be less dynamism in the economy and things like that. Well, it kind of reminds me of the same thing in crypto when it comes to regulation. We need some regulation. We need enterprises like Hedera to understand where the guardrails are, not have them trying to comply with laws that might not even apply to the crypto space. So if you have some regulation, you have smart regulation, you're going to maximize crypto growth. That's kind of like the maximum growth on the Laffer curve. And as you continue to increase the regulation, you might get to a point where you have maximum consumer protection. We certainly don't want to go overboard, though, because just like with the Laffer curve, where you start to lose revenue after you go past a certain amount of regulation or a certain amount of tax rate, you're going to start to stifle innovation. You're going to start to chase people offshore. You're going to have people start to avoid the regulation and try to find ways around it. So we want smart regulation. We want whatever this probe is, we want it to result in guidance. Now, for the most part in the crypto space, we want most cryptocurrencies like Hedera, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum to fall under the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC. And then, we do want the SEC possibly to regulate some things, but not too many, like possibly the things that Toko are doing, tokenizing securities. That's what they're for. But we want them to be in a small corner, and we want the CFTC to be taking most of it. What are your thoughts on crypto regulation there, Zep?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not that well acquainted with the US as, obviously I should be. I need to get a better grounding in that. But I did see today that Coinman, the H Barbarian, shout out Coinman, he got a tweet. I'll just pull it up now. It said the Law Commission of England and Wales has published new proposals to reform the law relating to digital assets, in brackets, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, whereby they will fall under a distinct category of personal property, provisionally called data objects. Commenting on the new proposals, Professor Sarah Green, the Law Commissioner for Commercial and Common Law, said, by clarifying the law, England and Wales could reap the potential rewards and position itself as a global hub for digital assets. So this falls completely in line with Rishi Sunak, who is our Chancellor of Exchequer's sort of broad goal to make the UK a tech capital of the world. And obviously, one of the big things they're looking at is positive regulation for digital assets, for Web3. I think if countries like the UK are, obviously the SEC will always lead the way in this sort of regulation, but if in the UK we can also sort of get these positive laws to bring the innovation in, then that makes it more competitive for other countries like America. If they see we're doing that, and see we're attracting in these pools of talent, then hopefully there'll be some degree of competitiveness there to drive sort of more welcoming, more positive regulation.
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, if you have friendly regulation in a place like the UK, that's going to influence what our regulators do. They certainly don't want to be left behind. And leaders like the UK and the United States, they have to have this friendly regulation to make sure that, we get the maximum benefit from the cryptocurrency space, which I think is a revolution on par with the internet.
For sure.
All right. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is Outlier Ventures. So they just finished their first crop of accelerators for startups in the space. They have something called Hedera Basecamp, and they're doing a great job, and we're going to try to get them on for an interview with some of their startups that they helped out. They're going to participate in the investor pitch event that's going to be on August 18th. I'm going to be hosting that. We did one just a little while ago. There's plenty of videos out there with the different pitches from the different teams. So we're just excited about what Outlier Ventures is doing. And we also have Outlier is coming out with a new crop. So right now, startups can apply for assistance from Outlier Ventures. I know that you get $100,000 for 6% equity, and they have all kinds of other things that they're doing to support these startups. All right, Zep, the next thing we want to cover is Hedera Gaming. And I know that you're passionate about gaming in general. It seems like this is just completely exploding for whatever reason. I think because of Hedera's efficiency, we have a lot of people that are coming into the space from the gaming industry. We have Lithos and Vavel and 1 to 11, Dropper, Ubisoft, Meta Wizards, Reality Plus, Slime World, Earthlings. I mean, we keep going down the line. I actually just did an interview recently with Earthlings. We're going to be posting it tomorrow. And they did a fantastic job. Their graphics are beautiful. They have a great storyline. I suggest that nobody miss it. But what are your thoughts so far on Hedera Gaming?
I'm very excited. Like you said, not only are we going into gaming into sort of one category like AAA, we seem to be covering all boards. So we've got, Vavel, we've got 1 to 11, we've got Lithos, etc., etc. And I think to see all of these different sort of genres of game, I suppose, like play to earn, you've got the more sort of high end ones of the AAA, to see that they can all find mutual ground within Hedera. It's a sort of catch all for the gaming ecosystem. I think is definitely massively positive to see. And gaming is one of the fastest growing industries in the world. It's only going to get bigger as we move into things like 5G and streaming games online and VR and all of this incredible stuff. As we plunge further into this metaverse, gaming is only going to go further and further up on, in terms of revenue, in terms of people that are gaming, etc., etc. So if we can make ourselves a hub for that, a real hotspot, then I think that's a massive positive. I think definitely gaming on Hedera is one of the biggest use cases we could potentially have, I think. And also, to see 1 to 11, which are an Indian-based firm who are trying to, I think they've got 3 games they're creating, which are all play to earn, sorry, but with a sustainable business model. So, we saw Axie had its sort of incredible rise and spectacular fall. And the hope is that we can have, mirror that spectacular rise, but also keep it sustainable, keep it so that people can come and build or play in these universes, in these metaverses for a long period of time and not suffer any kind of, economic downfall because of the wider market, cryptocurrency. So yeah, I'm very excited to see these further, sorry, it's incredibly loud outside, to see this industry on Hedera continue to blossom.
Well, I wouldn't worry about what's going on outside. I think we stay focused on gaming because I can't hear whatever's going on over there. Your audio is fine. All right. So, Zep, the next thing we wanted to cover is the latest bridge from Avalanche to Hedera. What do you have for us on that?
Yeah, so I saw today that Certic, who are a big auditing firm in the Web3 space, have audited the new Avalanche bridge, which is the first Avalanche bridge into the Hedera ecosystem. So, in the last sort of week and a half, 2 weeks, we saw, DAI come over, make a DAO. We saw Link come over. We saw USDT. We saw Aave. We saw lots of different projects be ported through Hashboards. And those are all, great pieces of infrastructure for our DeFi ecosystem. But Avalanche wasn't on that list. And so we've seen the first Avalanche bridge. Avalanche is one of the fastest growing ecosystems itself. It's in the top 10 currently. They're growing sort of exponentially as well. So to be able to get some of their user base over, to get the sort of efficiencies that we have, like the consensus ordering of fair ordering transactions, stuff like that, the ABFT security, carbon negative network, if they can then see that there are more benefits on our network as well, then there's a big user base over there to draw over.
Yeah, completely agree. And what about Redemption DAO?
So Redemption DAO was formed in the last 48 hours and currently ongoing in the Congo, the Republic of Congo. There is a massive bid for 11 billion hectares of the Congolese rainforest. And that's being auctioned off to the oil firms so that they can sort of exploit that land to do more drilling. And, that in itself is an environmental disaster. Not only are you removing one of the biggest ecosystems for withdrawing carbon out of the atmosphere, but when that rainforest dries up, which it does after it is, sort of decimated, the carbon that it has stored is actually re-released back into the atmosphere. So what that does is if all of this auction goes through and is sold off and it is destroyed, then that's 3 years worth of carbon emissions in one hit gone. So wow. It could potentially be an environmental sort of catastrophe in itself. We've seen it happen with the Amazon, and obviously there's far more issues at hand than just this idea that the Congolese government being at all selfish. They've got their own economy to support. The reason they're doing it is to support their own economy. There was this idea, I think pre-COVID, pre impending recession or whatever, that the sort of other nations, i.e. the European nations and the American and all of these other slightly more economically advanced countries would be able to support that rainforest and help them to fuel their own economy without selling off this land. But, the priorities have changed. Unfortunately, the news isn't covering it particularly well. So this DAO has been basically set up to try and bid on these auctions as well. Currently the goal is to get one plot of these 31 plot out of 30 of these plots, to just show that people can rally, people can formulate, people can come together across the internet using something like a DAO that Web3 is from Web3. There's more utility to Web3 driving sustainability than just what we're doing with the SIF, but also with things like formulating DAOs, and so I think, their main objectives is basically to get these plots of lands, but also to help the Congolese people with more economic incentives that we can provide through Web3. It hasn't been beefed out in full yet. It's sort of 48 hours work, but it's a matter of urgency to get it up and running for sure.
Yeah, well, I hope they're successful with it, and I'd like to participate. All right, Zep. So the next thing we wanted to cover is staking. We talked a lot about this last week, but we've entered phase 1 of staking. There's 4 phases. Most of the interesting stuff happens in phase 3 when people actually can get rewards, but plenty of work is being done right now. One of the things in phase 3 that we would have to wait on before rewards could be paid is account 800 would have to reach 250 million HBAR before they would start to actually pay out rewards. One thing that just happened is it looks like the HBAR Foundation has already funded that account with 250 million HBAR. So we won't have to wait for that when we actually get to that point. That said, it doesn't mean that we're going to get to staking rewards any sooner. Just because it's been funded, I know people are getting excited because that step has already been checked off the list, but that doesn't mean we're going to get to staking any faster. It has just already been funded. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things that I read in it was the first grant. So, this is the first grant of potentially more, as we move. I think the general consensus is that it's sort of bootstrapping until we get to community nodes and then a completely permissionless network. So I think, it seems, to me, it's exciting because it's not like it's just going to be a one hit, drive the hype. It sounds like it's very thought out, obviously very well thought out for a small amount of yield over a very long period of time so that, that can help bring people into the ecosystem like most other projects have done, with Phantom and other projects like that. They did that from the very beginning. And that obviously brought in a lot of users. The more users come in, the more people invest, the higher the investment goes up, the more developers look in just because it gets more media attention. So, I think it's a solid piece of infrastructure that we've needed, and getting slightly close to that is it's very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'm going to jump into the market a little bit here. Right now, HBAR is sitting at just over 7 cents. We're pretty much flat on the week and pretty much flat on the day as well. We did have a pretty good dip earlier this week, but on Wednesday, the Federal Reserve came out and yes, they raised interest rates by 0.75%. That was expected, but they called it a dovish hike because a lot of the rhetoric they put out around it was fairly dovish, and we saw risk assets like stocks and crypto rally following that announcement. And HBAR has, been holding fairly good over the past few days, has actually gone up over the past few days, and is holding flat over the past 24 hours. Now, we are above that 50-day moving average that I discussed last week. The last time we were above this 50-day moving average was back in April, so it's actually been a while. I am still looking at 6 cents for support and possibly that 50-day moving average at about 6.8 cents for support. And really, we need to break that Google spike high at 8 cents to see a good sustained rally. A quick stater staking update. One HBAR X is now worth 1.1317 HBAR. So people that have been staking with stater staking from the beginning have earned over 13%. We have a total value locked of 655 million HBAR. I think that's pretty similar to what we saw last week. And the APY is sitting at 37%. So stater staking is still clicking along. We don't know what the rewards are going to be for August, so I still haven't heard anything on that. Have you?
I haven't either yet, so I'm sure we'll have a Twitter Spaces soon to iron that out.
Yeah, because all they did was give guidance through July, so it's interesting. We'll see what comes of it, but hopefully we're going to get native staking here soon as well, so stater won't be standing on its own.
Definitely.
All right, Zep, that's pretty much all I had on my list. Do you have anything else before we get going?
What else have I seen? No, I think that's pretty much everything. Another eventful week in the ecosystem. It's getting increasingly hard to keep up, which is pretty impressive itself considering sort of the wider market conditions. So yeah, I'm excited for next week.
Yep. Well, unfortunately or fortunately, I am going on vacation this week. I do have some more content coming out. I think I'm going to have Earthlings coming out tomorrow. That's Saturday. And then on Sunday, I think I'm going to have Acme Labs is going to have their stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to interview them tomorrow. But after that, I'm going to be out of pocket for a little while. But I'm going to be ready to hit the ground running when I come back the following week.
For sure. Well, I look forward to welcoming you back, Brendan.
All right. Sounds good. Zep, thank you for swinging by again. And we'll do this again soon.
Thank you very much for having me, Brandon.